Right now, somewhere in the world, a firework is exploding into the night sky. Loud, bright, harmless, and most people watching don't realize they're looking at the ancestor of one of the deadliest inventions in human history, because the same chemical reaction that lights up a sky on New Year's Eve is the exact reaction that once leveled castle walls. The story of the cannon doesn't start with a weapon, it starts with a mistake. In the 9th century, in China, a group of alchemists were doing what alchemists did, looking for immortality. They mixed saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal, trying to create an elixir that would let the emperor live forever. Instead, they created something that burned violently, spat sparks, and occasionally exploded in their faces. They hadn't found immortality, they'd found gunpowder, and for a while, nobody quite knew what to do with it. At first, it was used for exactly what you'd expect. Fireworks, loud noises to scare off evil spirits, entertainment for festivals, nothing military about it at all. But gunpowder doesn't stay a toy for long. Someone, somewhere, packed it into a bamboo tube, attached it to an arrow, and lit the fuse. That arrow didn't just fly, it screamed through the air, trailing fire. The fire arrow was born, and war had just changed forever. By the 10th and 11th centuries, Chinese armies were using gunpowder in grenades, in fire lances, tubes that shot flame and shrapnel directly at enemy soldiers. These weren't cannons yet, they were closer to flamethrowers, but the core idea was already there. Contain an explosion, pointed at something you want destroyed. Here's the problem though. A fire lance is a one-time weapon. Once it burns out, it's useless. Someone needed to figure out how to make the explosion reusable, controllable, and much, much bigger. And that meant one thing, a barrel strong enough to survive the blast. By the 12th century, Chinese engineers had started building tubes out of bamboo reinforced with metal, then eventually pure cast iron or bronze. Pack gunpowder at the base, drop a projectile on top, light the fuse, and the explosion had nowhere to go but forward. That's not a fire lance anymore. That's a cannon. The earliest confirmed cannon in the world is a bronze artifact from China dated to around 1290, though some evidence suggests true cannons existed even earlier, closer to 1128. Small, crude, more of a hand cannon than a siege weapon, but the principle inside it is identical to every cannon that came after, including the ones sitting in museums today, weighing tons and firing iron balls the size of a human head. So how did this technology cross an entire continent? The answer is the Mongols. When the Mongol Empire swept across Asia in the 13th century, they didn't just conquer territory, they absorbed knowledge. Chinese engineers, Chinese gunpowder recipes, and Chinese weapons technology moved west along the same trade routes the Mongols controlled. Wherever the empire expanded, gunpowder expansion followed close behind. By the early 1300s, cannons had reached the Middle East and soon after Europe. And Europe did something with the technology nobody in China had quite done yet. They scaled it up. European blacksmiths, already skilled at casting bells out of bronze, realized the same casting techniques could produce cannon barrels. A bell and a cannon aren't as different as you'd think. Both are hollow, cast metal shapes built to survive intense pressure. The first confirmed European cannons show up in illustrated manuscripts around 1326. Vase-shaped tubes firing arrows or metal balls, crude, unreliable, occasionally more dangerous to the crew firing them than to the enemy. But within a single century, that crude tube became a siege-breaking machine. By the mid-1400s, massive bombards were reducing castle walls that had stood for hundreds of years into rubble within hours. Think about what that meant for centuries. A thick stone wall was the ultimate defense. Kings built castles specifically because walls worked. Armies could camp outside for months and never get in. Then, in a single afternoon, a cannon could do what a siege used to take a year to accomplish. The entire logic of warfare, of architecture, of power itself had to be rewritten. And it wasn't just wars. Naval warfare changed too. Ships stopped ramming each other and started blowing holes in each other from a distance. Armies stopped relying purely on knights in armor because a cannonball doesn't care how thick your steel plate is. The age of the armored knight on horseback, 1,000 years of military dominance, ended largely because of a mistake made by alchemists chasing immortality. So here's the full picture. Somebody wanted to live forever. Instead, they built something that could end a life from half a mile away. That accidental mixture spread from a Chinese laboratory to a battlefield weapon, then across an empire, then across the world, changing the shape of castles, ships, armies, and entire civilizations along the way. The next time you watch a firework burst overhead, remember what you're actually looking at, not just light and color. The same chemistry that once brought down walls that had stood for centuries. We didn't invent the cannon on purpose. We stumbled into it while looking for something else entirely. And that's how most of history actually works.